All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. This is Neith. There's no one in the chat room. With me today, we have Casey McGeever and Matt Wilson from Ship of Heroes, and I'm all tongue-tied, so please forgive that slip of the tongue. Today, we're going to be looking at the villains of Ship of Heroes, because what is a villain? What is a hero without a villain? Would you two like to get started on what we're looking at here?
Sure. This is Casey. Hello, everybody. Glad to be here and have a chance to talk to you. So, Neith, can they all see the screen? Can they see Iris on the right and three costumes in a line up there?
I have my second account up just to watch what's going on, and it looks just fine to me. And I see Pashenka Paz here saying hello, and Yulbum saying hello. So it looks like we're all good.
Okay, so what I was hoping to show today, and with Matt's help, actually Matt's doing all the work. I'm just talking.
Hey everybody, I'm Matt. Just say hi.
Good work. So we're going to talk a little bit about the villains, the enemies in Ship of Heroes. And so this is a little bit of an odd place to start, but you can see Iris, our hero who we're hinting might be a secret villain, but might not be too. She is a witch aboard the ship. So she has magical powers, and we used her when we showed the Dark Magic Blast power set. And you might be thinking, why are there just clothes next to her? And the answer is, well, the enemy group that has magical powers is called the Red Sigil, and they hide amongst the whole population. They don't wear special costumes. They're not easily identified. So
they hide so well you can't even see their face right now.
Yeah,
correct.
They're just
Correct.
clothes walking around. Oh.
So symbolically, we thought we'd just show three costumes that we recently made for civilian NPCs. And Matt, I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit, but one of the things about these is we're making the costumes ourselves, and you can see patterns and styles slightly different. This particular stuff we didn't buy, and we're also, of course, controlling, whether they're heavy or light on bandwidth requirements for the game. We want to be able to have a lot of NPCs walking around, and we want them in different clothes. So the two you can see there are regular males, and then we've got our big guy model. He also has an outfit as well, with the suspenders and the hat. Quite jaunty, that. Matt, go ahead and show them around the back. And so I'll just say we decided to set these guys, or at least their clothes, in the warehouse district, just to show them off a little bit. But we wanted to talk about the Red Sigil, which is an enemy group. They have magical powers. And what's their deal? Why are they an enemy group? And the answer is that aboard the ship, really, superheroes are running things, and the magical folk are useful, powerful, respected, but, they're not the leadership cast of the ship. And they would like to be the leadership cast of the ship. So the sigil is determined, it's attempting a slow-motion coup.
I do have a question about that, actually.
Go ahead.
So far as I'm aware, there are magical superheroes in the superhero universe of various kinds.
Yes.
Are there not on Ship of Heroes then? Because you're talking about them as though they're two distinct groups.
So there are lots of magical users aboard the ship, and the overwhelming majority are good. Iris right here is good. But there's a subgroup within them that's the Red Sigil, and they would like to overthrow the current situation. They don't want to get rid of the heroes, though. What they want is they want guys like Ambassador, Sword Blossom. They want those superheroes working for the magical guys, not the other way around. So they're looking for a shift in political power aboard the ship. But they're not looking to kill everyone. They're not looking to make everyone into a magic user. They just want more resources, more money, more power for themselves, which is why they're a subgroup. Most magical users are, in fact, quite satisfied with their situation aboard the ship. This is also why magic users, it's hard to spot them, right? Because most magical users are good, and the magic users are also the wealthiest class aboard the ship because they make a lot of stuff for export. They make magical items that are sold to other ships, to worlds, to colonies. They make stuff that's sold aboard the ship. And
Yeah.
go ahead, that's going to come out in the crafting system and that sort of thing. Go ahead, Knight.
I remember reading the Red Sigil and talks about smuggling, and how
Exactly.
you're going to eventually be going into a little bit more about that.
Correct. Some of that stuff gets smuggled aboard and some gets smuggled off ship, which is why they're rich, which is one of the reasons why they can afford to hire mercenaries for protection. So did we have any questions from the audience, or should we go on?
Come on, audience. Here's your chance. Ask some questions. They like the new clothes.
Thank you. We have an artist specializing in this right now. He seems to be particularly talented. We like the way the clothing folds.
That's neat patterns on that vest there.
It is. I think we may be looking for some double-breasted stuff in the future too. That would give us a little different look and feel.
And some nice slinky evening gowns.
We're going to get to some slinky a little later in the podcast, in the live stream.
All right, Glad Dog wants to know, are the Yakas their primary mercenaries?
Yes, they're the first ones we're introducing. There will be several other clans aboard the ship. And by the way, they don't always get along clan to clan either. So it's a complex universe. And the enemies react to each other as well as to the heroes, which I think is an important thing. It's not just everybody against heroes, today we're fighting this one or that one. These guys interact, whether there are heroes there or not.
It looks like
Matt's
Yul
giving us
wants to know how you pronounce that, the mercenary company.
Yakas. Yakas Mercenary Clan. Matt's giving you some close-ups there on the fabric textures and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing. I'm still wowed at the lack of clipping that I saw in the first tour you gave me.
Okay, Matt, let's go to the next one. So Matt's running to the next set we've situated here, so we can talk about the story. And this gives us a chance to show off a little bit of the warehouse district that we've been talking about lately. Okay, so our favorite Nagdelians. And you can see we've posed them here for us so we can talk about them. So the two on the left are the standard soldier and lieutenant that we've shown in videos, in combat teasers. We've got them at a little higher resolution here, and we've also refined them a little bit because we're constantly changing them.
I was going to say, they look quite a bit better than the last time I saw them.
Hopefully they get better each time. One of the things about these guys is that the color red is associated more with higher caste and higher authority. So size also goes to that. The lieutenant that Matt is focused on right now is our regional lieutenant. So he has a very interesting power. Obviously, the soldier is a soldier. He's got a gun. He shoots. He's got the typical kind of situation you'd expect from an enemy soldier. The lieutenant, you can see to his right, is capable of calling in reinforcements if his health drops to 50% or less. So this makes him, in a sense, he's got a little bit of the mastermind power going on. And when you fight a bunch of these guys, it's really could be ill-advised, for example, to drive 3, 4, 5 of them down to 50% at the same time, because suddenly they'll each call reinforcements right on top of you. Those reinforcements will begin fighting immediately.
Now, could this be a never-ending battle?
It could be, or it could be a team wipe if you can't get hold of this stuff. So when you're playing the game, it's going to be important to actually be able to recognize the enemies and realize that different ones have different powers. Now, to his immediate right, we've added some guys. So we just had those 2 Nagdelians a few months ago. This next one, silver and gold Nagdelian with more red, he is also a lieutenant, which you can tell by size. He's the same size as the other one. But he has got a different, unusual power. And we've decided we're going to just tease the audience and not say what it is. So that will test if everybody's awake or not. But you can see he is new, and it would not be hard visually to tell these guys apart.
I like the spikes.
Yes. And then, actually to the right of him is the first Nagdelian boss. You can see, again, more spikes. He's taller. Now, let me just say, this is a work in progress. This guy's not done. We just imported him right out of Maya. Matt dropped him in here. So he's not going to be all white like this, but you can already see the details, shape of the head and skull and helmet, differences on the body, differences on the armor, as well as being larger, although he's obviously the same species as the other three.
Would you zoom up to get a good look at his head and kind of move around it? I'm a little curious to see. It
You can
reminds me
see
of the
he's got kind of
Shredder.
a sagittal crest going on there.
I was just thinking of the Shredder.
So that crest on top, I think, is also going to turn out to be red.
Cool.
Matt, did you want to stop and just tell us what we're looking at in terms of textures, normal maps, that sort of stuff, contrasting the one from, obviously it's been popped right in out of Maya versus the other three, which are finished?
Really what you're looking at is the normal map baked onto a game model. There's no color map or roughness map applied to this, so it's the other two, you figure your color map is typically referred to as the albedo, or just the base color, and so that's not applied, and that's what gets your your colors from it. And then the roughness map is kind of like, a good way to describe that is sort of like how shiny something is. And of course, there's also no metallic map on it. So the only thing you're looking at is a game model and a normal map. That's it. That was baked over from a high poly sculpt.
Yeah, but it really shows off the skill of the sculpting when you don't have the textures distracting.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, our artist that did this was Robert Brown. He's a very, very skilled character artist. Did a great job on this sculpt. I'm really impressed with this one here.
Yes, actually, he did both of the two new ones, I believe.
The audience is impressed as well, so send along many compliments.
Absolutely.
I really like those spikes. We need more spikes.
Exactly. So you can envision a future for the game in which there may be 10 or 12 or 15 different casts of Nagdelians with different powers. We need to build it up a little bit. We started with the 2. We're now up to, what would we say, 3.5 here, almost 4. So we'd like to get 5 or 6 for launch, because that gives us more complexity with the Nagdelians. But let's talk about their motivations for a moment. They're a completely different species. They see themselves as the only species that ought to exist, the only intelligent tool-using species that ought to exist. Their goals for the ship are to destroy it or to conquer it and make it into a Nagdelian vessel.
So would they?
Go ahead.
Would they kill off all the people and take it over? Yeah, they
Yep.
just. Okay.
Exactly. So the Nagdelians are the ultimate bad boys in the game. They just want to kill everybody, take our stuff, and rule the galaxy, rub us out as a species. Which means you can imagine that what happens. Suppose the Red Sigil's having a scrap with some heroes, and then Nagdelians arrive. The scrap is suspended for a moment while everybody deals with the Nagdelian threat, because they are the ultimate threat here. They have no partners, they have no allies, they're very dangerous, they breed quickly, they have high technology, and they're really not interested in negotiation.
Glad Dog would like to know, is the big one 2 heads taller than Ambassador?
The big one is probably 1 head taller than Ambassador, I would say. Ambassador's about 6'6". The top of his head's probably close to the top of that hat. So Ambassador's roughly the same size as the Lieutenant. So yeah, this is a bigger guy. He's a big melee combat model, this particular boss.
Gotcha. And Yul would like to know how they got on the ship in the first place.
Well, they can beam in, because one of the technologies that both sides have is you can punch through the shields of the ship and beam in through a portal and deliver shock troops or attacks. Now, of course, the Justice is a really big ship, so it's difficult to beam in through a portal and get enough guys. A rational attack plan would be to beam in, try to take a section of the ship and control it, so you could knock down the shields and then just flood the ship with Nagdelians and take it over by numbers, because they are kind of a numbers kind of enemy. They'll pour at you.
I'm thinking of SWTOR now, and what was that first one? That first kind of, I'm totally blanking on what they call it now. That first dungeon you get to where you're protecting the ship from invaders or invading the ship. I feel like such an idiot now. I'm blanking on the name. You get off the newbie planet and you find yourself on the big ship, and you go into that thing, and this is the evil side.
In which game?
Star Wars.
Star Wars: The Old
Sweater.
Republic.
Yeah, I called it SOTOR.
Okay, so let's see. You
I think
start out on the Red Desert planet, and you get off, and you go to Droman Kos or something on the first world.
Well, this is on the orbital station.
Oh yes, okay.
That
And
very first, you can do it on your way there.
oh, it's like the Black Talon mission.
That's it. Yeah, the Black Talon, where they
Yeah.
punch through and then kind of flood in. That
Yes.
to me is a little. That sounds like what you're talking about.
Exactly.
I've always pronounced that Black Talon. Is it Talon? I always thought it was Talon.
You're probably right, Matt. I don't
It's-
know.
Yeah,
I guess that word is Talon, so I think you're probably right.
Oh, that's cool. Can you zoom back in on that? Yeah.
These guys have little frills of feathers
Yeah,
coming
that's
in from
awesome.
underneath.
Feathers and spikes. I like these guys. They're good villains.
They are. So these are our absolute bad boys. So now you've got two completely different spectrums here. You know, the Red Sigil, they can wait. They're not in a hurry. They're looking for the day when they can move up one rung, and they'll have the superheroes working for them. These guys, they want to kill everybody. And part of that is, you know, strategically, the hero ships like the Justice, they're out on the edge of the Human Federation. They are part of the reason why colonies cannot just be swept over, because the hero ships can respond and punch back an invasion. So you kind of got to take these guys first.
Yul has another question. He'd like to know if they have controlling or buff and debuff type powers.
Yes, they do. Control, buff, and healing powers can all be had within the larger Nagdelian set of powers and enemies. One of our devs was telling me just today, in fact, that he thought that there should be a Nagdelian healer to offset the fact that there will be hero side healers, because that would potentially change the dynamics of a big raid if both sides have healers.
Target the healers
You've got to have
first.
the mechanic of going after the healers.
Yeah, target the healers first.
Right.
That's kind of when you mentioned that in your post the other day about the one enemy who had the power to tell who the healer was on
Right.
the heroes team and would start sucking out their power doing mana drains. I thought that was really amazing because, I mean, one of the things is players use tactics against the enemy mobs, you know. They target the healers first. They go after the casters first. If there's a pet caster, then they'll target the pet summoner as opposed to the pet. Well, the enemies should be doing that as well.
Correct.
That to me makes it much more exciting and challenging. So I thought that was a great thing when you said it.
Exactly. And if you see us here with 4 Nagdelians aiming for 6 or 8, if we can do it, 5 or 6, if you know, it's a little bit flexible, but at launch, that means that various combinations of Nagdelians would have sort of different powers, be employing different tactics, be behaving differently. Hopefully you won't just be mashing the keys, killing them, right? You may need to stop and think because they're dangerous.
I like to hear that.
Matt, perfect. You're going to go to the next one. I just want to say, as we're running across this thing, there will be more than 3 days without an accident.
I was about to ask about that. You were pretty accident prone, only going 3 days there.
Yeah, a good facility in the first world, you know, likes to have a number of 200, 400, 600 up there. Yeah. So now here you go, Prometheans. And you can see a variety of them. They're posed in different ways. So in this particular setup, we have the big robot, we have males, we have females, we have them accoutered differently. Let's talk about the motivations for the Prometheans. Prometheans have cybernetic powers that give them a lot of offensive powers, and they also have at least a minimal level. Some have much more than minimal level of dark magical powers. And because of that, I guess I would say they're kind of insane and aggressive. Another element of them is they have been infused, each of them, with some kind of link to Dr. Cornish. That's part of the first task force that involves this enemy, so I don't want to let too much out of the bag there, but you can see the mechanical legs, you can see mechanical arms, eyes, brain adjustments on some of them. You can see hands that are used for casting magic. You can see the guns. This guy can do both. He can cast both magic and weaponry, and has had a full brain augmentation and both eye augmentation. So
can you zoom in to get a look at the brain there?
So for him, he's a power caster. You know, he's augmented across the board.
That really is amazing texture work.
By the way, we did all this work in-house. These guys are created in-house, all the props and everything else created in-house. In fact, the guy who did this work is on this call, and it is not me.
Yeah, these guys were fun to make, and thank you on the texture work. I was pretty happy with the helmet, the way it turned out.
Now, what's going on with his hand? It looks almost holographic.
Magical casting, dark magic casting, which is inherently at odds with his heavy cybernetic implants. So the two powers don't want to coexist, but they are forced to.
My idea for when I made that originally is that you figure if you're in the future, right, and you have these holograms, and maybe like you're familiar with like Star Trek, they got like the holodeck or whatever, and even like in Star Wars, you see like the holographic communication where somebody records themselves. So I also thought, if they had that kind of technology for communication, maybe they had it for being able to, utilize it as a weapon, like a hologram weapon. So it's kind of like taking a laser and forming it into a hand. So if he touches you with it, ow, That was kind of my thinking with that. I thought it looked really cool too. So he's got the holographic hand there going on.
Exactly. So I would just amplify, these guys originally were all followers of Dr. Cornish, and new ones have obviously been made because Cornish disappeared 2 centuries ago. But Cornish was in the engineering levels, and indeed there are whole sections of the engineering levels that appear to not be accessible from the ship, but these guys have them. So there may be whole underlevels under the known sections where these guys have their holdouts, their bases. They also grab people and forcibly convert them, and they find volunteers, interestingly, who want to go this way.
That ties in well with a question SOH Golden Ace would like to know if they'll be choosable for players to play.
Not immediately, no. This is a villain cast, and we're making a game that has heroes. And I often get that question, why aren't we making both right at the outset? And it's a scope control issue, right? If we just make heroes, that solves certain things for us. We can launch a great game with these as enemies, and then as an expansion, we can do something different, right? Now, if we're asking, will we be able to make cybernetic players? Probably the answer will be yes.
So they could put in their role play that they're an escaped Promethean. Correct. Or something to that effect.
So again, these guys would tend to boil out of the lower sections of each level of the ship. They tend to be, the guys who are constantly a thorn in the side of the engineering members of the ship. So Sword Blossom, who is in fact the head of the engineering aboard the ship, faces these guys a lot. Whereas Ambassador, who's outwardly facing for the whole ship, facing the galaxy, often is involved with threats that are Promethean or occasionally mercenaries, because they often have their origins off the ship, right? And then we'll get into the storyline a little deeper, but say Dr. Strikewell, with her advanced medical knowledge and all, she often deals with the smugglers, because there's huge medical smuggling going on in and out of the ship.
Can we zoom in for a closer look at the robot?
Sure.
I really like that you're thinking about the individual dynamics, politics, and interactions between the various heroes and the villains. I feel like that's something that's often left out of many games. And
That's actually one of the things we wanted to cover today. So, you know, when these guys show up on the upper levels, they're a threat. They're quite dangerous. They'd like to take over the ship. Their plan would be to take over the ship and forcibly convert every human into a Promethean. They think they're the future of mankind. So they believe that the heroes are actually holding back mankind's advancement into a new Promethean superspecies. That's why they're fighting. That's what they're trying to get at. But of course, if Nigdalians were sweeping over the warehouse district and Prometheans happened to be there, they would fight the Nigdalians as well because, well, the Nigdalians see them as something between an annoyance and food. They'd want to kill all the Prometheans.
Food, huh? Are people food too, or is there something special about the Prometheans?
For a Nigdalian, people are food too. So, okay, I think Matt's going to move us on to our next group here. And Neith, as you've probably noticed, yeah, we do like those windows in the roof there. That's cool, that letting light into that building.
Yeah, this area really has improved since the first tour that you gave me.
Yes, yes. And you were on, you may have been on the first tour. You were on one of the first tours.
I think you had one tour before me.
Yeah. So here we go with the Yakus. Now, we've never shown these guys in their 3D uniforms before. So we actually have multiple examples here. On the left, you can see a melee brawler, and he's in the Yakus. All the uniforms match. We did show the costume, I'm sorry, the
concept art.
Thank you, the concept art for these costumes. And you can tell a brawler and then a big guy who's also going to be physical, but he's had a cybernetic arm implant, right? Which people sometimes choose to do and sometimes have to do. And then you can see the young lady who's, you know, playing it cool there. She is also a Yakus, and she's got her characteristic female costume. And then next to her, I think we have, this is a standard officer costume without the coat.
That is an amazing costume.
And then to the right, you can see the officer costume with the coat.
And that is an amazing coat, too. I want to wear these things. Will these be available for players?
Well, they may be. I guess I should just own up and say we haven't made a final decision. We kind of like this stuff. On the other hand, we got to make sure it makes sense in the story. If this coat is not available, something like it will be.
I was about to ask, if not the exact coat, will we be able to have something very similar to it?
Yes. So, and by the way, we're showing regular guy as an officer. It will also be possible for the female to wear a coat over her outfit, marking her as an officer with a variation on her costume. So,
can we get another zoom in on the officer there to the right and circle? No, the guy without the coat, and kind of circle around to get a nice view of that. That just looks really cool. SOH Gold and the Ace would like a zoom in on the yellow hair, if possible.
Matt, do you want to talk about the hair for a moment?
Yeah, when it comes to hair, we have two different hair shaders that we use. For players, and typically at LOD 0, we have the UE4 standardized hair shader that Epic released from Paragon. And then whenever it comes like LOD 1 and oftentimes just with random civilians that don't really matter, we use a cheaper shader. And this is just for optimization and performance. This hair here, I believe, is the cheaper shader. But yeah, as you can see, even with the cheaper shader, it still looks pretty darn good. Yeah, so.
I will just say for the record, you know, that hair is one of the things we want to upgrade, and We'd like to get it done before launch, but we're very focused as well on the performance of the game. We're building an MMO, not a single-player game, and to us, if you can't get 50 players in an area interacting plus NPCs, you haven't maybe hit the target for the whole MMO idea. You should be able to see other players. You should be able to see NPCs, which means the total game has a total amount of bandwidth you can apply, right? So you got to really be planning. We've been doing a lot of optimizing almost since the get-go, and we are still doing that, still working on it. But Matt, I'm thinking I'm pleased where we are right now, and I think you are too.
Yeah, we're making strides of progress on performance and optimization. We're getting really, really smooth gameplay in our optimized maps and whatnot. It's just turning out really great lately.
It's an enormous effort. But let's talk about the motivations for this enemy group. So at some level I could say, well, the mercenaries just want to get paid, but they also have other motivations. First off, these particular Yakus are here on one of the lower levels of the ship. Yakus that you might see on an upper level might have very similar uniforms, but with a different color combination than this sort of red, brown, black. Might be shades of green or shades of blue because they'd be higher level Yakus, more powerful, more dangerous. In addition, you could say, well, how could there be so many aboard the ship? This is something I often wonder in MMOs. Is there a rationale? Well, we all know that as heroes, when we're defeated and killed, we're teleported immediately to the health center where we're resurrected. These guys are aboard the ship because they are passengers, and the same thing happens to them. Now, they may be resurrected and jailed. They may be resurrected and booted off at the next world we stop at, but there are lots of them aboard the ship traveling from point A to point B, some who are almost permanently situated there because they've got long-term contracts, and they can be killed and resurrected. So in the story universe, why are they around? Because, well, people aboard the ship want them for protection, including, for example, the magical users aboard the ship like to have their own guards. Because there's a flavor in that group that they wish they could take over. They like to have their own little private armies, and they're rich and they can afford to do it. So mercenaries like the Yakus and other clans are often in the employ of magical folk.
How are they viewed by, say, Ambassador?
As potential troublemakers, potential criminals, and very rarely potential allies. Ambassador has a very jaundiced view of these guys. Also, one of the elements here of the ship is, which I think we've kind of mentioned in passing, but suppose you're a new 18-year-old and you've got superpowers and your plan is not to be a good guy. Well, the ship may very well strip you of your citizenship and throw you onto the next world. You've been committing crimes, you've been doing bad stuff. It's off the ship for you, boy or girl. You've been booted. So if you're 18 years old and you've got superpowers and you've been booted because you've got bad attitude, who wants you on that world? Well, mercenaries will hire you at once because they'd love to have mercenaries with superpowers. There's a real market for that in the galaxy. So sometimes mercenary groups have in them superpowered guys and gals, some even born aboard the Justice or born aboard other hero ships who have sort of bad attitude because they were booted. The story is complex for these characters. There's a lot of room to make interesting vignettes about various mercenaries.
I have to admit, I find these guys the most interesting in terms of story of the villains.
And we will undoubtedly have, at least 3 or 4 different clans of mercenaries aboard and more on the planets. So that's the long haul. I mean, that's not at launch, right? But you can see, actually, there's a lot we could do with this. So, Matt, I think you've got another one. So right now, we've covered the 4 enemy groups and their sort of motivations and what they'd like to see. And they're all different. I should have said, by the way, that the Yakus are the ones who have the energy drain and target healers, even when they've been taunted.
I was wondering, Wondering who that was. Oh, we had a question about that earlier. Can a tank taunt that energy drain enemy and get them off the healer? Or
Maybe,
is that
but not reliably.
So that's an exception that you have to be on the alert for.
Correct. Every enemy group plays differently. You got to be alert. So what you're seeing here is, we know in our storyline that unobtainium powers the engines, and it has an effect on life. It enhances the particular mix of isotopes aboard this ship, enhance human life and make people more likely to fulfill their maximum potential. And of course, they increase the rate at which superheroes are born. But it has effect on other life forms too. These robots, it's actually a single model that we've modified 4 times here.
Yeah, we changed the material with the pack. We didn't make these ourselves. These were things that we purchased. We thought these models were just excellent for our storyline.
That's correct. Thank you, Matt. We did buy these. You know, when you can buy a good asset, you definitely want to do it, because it takes time and effort to make everything from scratch, and we'd like to buy good assets. So we thought this was cool. And in the storyline, robots are sometimes affected by the unobtainium as well. Sometimes they kind of gain a consciousness. Now, they may gain a consciousness and discover that they like humans and want to do more for us. They may gain a consciousness and simply become highly effective, or they may gain a consciousness and look up and say, why, we're robotic life forms, the ship's a robotic life form. The ship is infested with these biological units, like barnacles on a ship, and we got to get rid of them, in which case they become immediately hostile.
That is awesome.
So you don't know exactly what you're going to get when they sort of transform, but hostility is one of the possibilities. So this is a future enemy group, and we're showing it here for the first time. You know, this is where we're at right now with this group. So again, their motivation is actually completely different. The ones that are hostile, they think that they are cleansing the ship and restoring its pure robotic nature by getting rid of the biological entities aboard. Which means, by the way, that these guys, of course, are hostile to Nagdelians as well. Because well, isn't everyone, really?
Well, the Nagdelians are trying to kill all the humans, but I suppose the Nagdelians are also biological.
Correct. Correct.
So are they all sort of individuals? Do you have a group working together, different groups working together? Is there any sort of cohesion among these awakened robots?
In the story, on those occasions when an evil robot wakes up, of course, one of the things he wants to do is get the other robots to see things his way. So evil amongst the robots can spread, and normally positive robots who are just going about their affairs can sort of be hacked by an evil robot, and trouble can spread very rapidly. I think it'd be interesting if we haven't decided this, but I think it'd be interesting as well if we saw an evil robot wake up and say, we need to create our version of a robotic superhero. Let's start constructing him. That would also be possible.
Raid the ship and steal parts.
Exactly. And
do they murder their own kind?
Could use.
What about murdering their own kind, murdering the good robots and taking their parts too?
Exactly. They would have no compunction.
I really like the glow.
The glow is cool.
That's why I stuck him inside of the warehouse, because I wanted the glow to pop out. I noticed that when I put him in the shade at one point, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. I gotta show that off.
So, okay, I think we have one more thing. So, Neith was one of our testers in our character creator test a few months ago, and she and others gave us some feedback that we needed a new kind of hero costume for the females. And so this is a work in progress. This is a hero costume that people will be able to choose, but we got a lot of requests for thigh-high boots. We got a lot of requests for sort of a better female-adapted bodysuit, similar to a one-piece bathing suit. The gloves. Matt, you can zoom in for a moment on the forehead, I think, and show, something that I think is cool up there.
Yeah, the hair needs an adjustment for this particular headpiece, but it goes around. But the hair kind of gets in the way because it's still in production.
Correct. So the thing that's not on this model is the stockings, the fishnet stockings, which are an option. So the question here we're going to ask our audience is everybody happy with this? Is it too skimpy? I mean, we take feedback from the audience, so tell us what you think. But
looks like they're with me. This looks pretty great.
Hold on. Before you ask the too skimpy question, all right, is it too skimpy, guys? I mean, this is fine, right? I mean, it's totally covering her.
So, and you can see the sash there. Also, for people wondering, it's our plan, which we've said many times. Maybe you've designed a different character, but you like those boots. We want you to be able to put those boots on with a different outfit. Maybe you like that sash and you want to be able to put that over, a skirt or a pair of trousers or a pair of shorts. Yes. The answer to that is yes. Maybe you like those gloves or that tiara, yes, mixing and matching.
Golden Ace would like to know if we'll be able to change the headpiece look with a different jewel or design or something like that. I think that's one of the things.
Probably not, but eventually we'll either have multiples of it or have changeable. There's a limit to what we can do at the launch. We are a small team. We're trying to make a really big game. So we like the idea that you'd be able to customize it.
Yeah, I mean, you could use that headpiece or a different, something else on her head. I mean, the pieces are mixable and matchable, so you mix and match and create your costume look.
Correct.
And it can all be color changed just like everything else?
Yes.
Correct. If you look at the boots, for example, you can see that the primary and secondary colors are actually covering, a significant amount of space. So it's quite significant to change the primary or change the secondary. We've got sort of two tones of gray going here, but you could have, red and green or yellow and purple, whatever you think floats your boat.
Can we zoom in on the gauntlets?
Oh, I screwed up when I was saying those fingernails are not supposed to be visible. Oops.
This is one of the issues with showing brand new stuff that's not quite done, but we think our audience is forgiving if a fingernail pokes through on a new product.
Now, how would that look if you made both the same color? Would it be a solid, or would there be a visible line where the color differences are?
I think
it would be a solid. You would still be able to see the normal map, so you would see that there's a difference. Like you would see that this line is there, but the colors would be the same.
Right. And one other question related to that, actually, this bugs me a lot in MMOs. You will have costumes, and if you pick the same color, they won't match. Like one black will be a solid deep dark black, and another black will be this sort of gray.
Right. I actually understand the reasoning behind that, and it is a challenge that you always get presented with. It's because of how the color using color overlays kind of works in the shaders. It's a challenge, but you always got to try to, when you notice it, the developer, being us, would go and we would adjust the tone map for that in order to get it to match more closely to the other color. The trick is to continue to tweak it until it's not noticeable. So like what you're saying, I know what you're talking about, and it has to do with the shaders and how you have to do it in order to allow people to change colors. There's really only one way to go about it. So constant challenge there.
Is that something you'll be interested in having feedback from players once they get their hands on it and start fooling around?
Yes, definitely, and we also are even paying attention to it ourselves. So yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I also am bugged by it, and it's so I'm making it a point to try to prevent that as much as possible.
That's great. You know, one of the things that bugs me, it's funny, I talk about Black Desert a lot because I love that game in many ways. But some of their costumes, they have painted on textures like the fishnets. So they look absolutely ridiculous when I put them on my character because they're not actual true transparencies. So you have my typical dark-skinned character, and then the legs with the fishnets, you have the painted white skin in the background of the fishnets.
Oh no.
I hope you're going to avoid that sort of thing too.
Okay, so for something like fishnets, it's entirely common to paint them on. It's kind of the best way to go about it, because it's almost impossible to prevent one overlay model from clipping through another one when they're like extremely close together, like fishnets would be. So you would paint them on, but the change of color was a flaw in their shader layout. That won't be a problem in ours. I can say that much. How we're going to go about in the end of doing fishnets or something like that, I can't really discuss at this time.
No, that's fine. I was just wondering because with that particular fishnet that I'm thinking about, it's the same color no matter what model puts it on. So if you don't have the standard sort of white skin tone, everybody knows the standard white skin tone, right? It looks absolutely ridiculous, and once you notice it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, we don't have that problem, and we'll be alert to make sure we don't get it suddenly.
No, that won't be an issue. That was just a flaw in the way they laid out their material, how they set their shader up, and they painted it on, which is common, but they didn't do it right. They didn't use a lerp correctly. That's the best way I could put it.
You can tell I spend a lot of time collecting clothes in games, huh?
Yeah, we have a couple of guys on our team who are also Black Desert Online fanatics who just love the game.
Except the auction house. Please do a better auction house than that.
We will. I think actually we have, but we're not able to show it yet.
They're arguing. Our audience is arguing about fighting in wedgies.
I like to think that this is a futuristic costume and no wedgies occur because of the super material, which both looks good and breathes like Egyptian cotton.
Like the outfit in The Incredibles they make for a stretchy girl.
Yes.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? Now's your second chance. We're all sitting here waiting. You were about to say something when I put that question to the audience.
I was just going to say, kind of, this is what we were going to show today because we've got 5 enemy groups. 4 of them have been developed and shown to the community, and the 5th one are the robots that we're working on. We're expanding the enemies, as you saw with the Nagdelians. We're taking the concept art that we published 3 or 4 months ago, and we've created the in-game costumes for the Yakus. And you can see we've created new civilian clothing, which will actually be usable in the game for NPCs and also for the Red Sigil. And you can kind of just see the whole thing's moving along is what I wanted to say. Also, we're kind of happy with the way our story's developing. We've got 5 enemy groups here. They're all there for different reasons. They all have different motivations. It's clear what each of them is trying to accomplish and why. And so their behavior's clear. It helps us craft the story in the future, set up believable and immersive missions. You can see this update to the Warehouse District. It obviously looks much more industrial now. Completely different than, say, the Science Park.
We do have a couple of questions now. SOH Golden Ace wants to know if you'll have badges.
Absolutely.
Is that similar to City of Heroes? I'm not quite sure what he means by that.
We love badges. So badges for killing stuff, badges for discovering places on the map, badges for teaming, badges for achievements, badges for leveling. Badges are great. And I will say as well, we also like the idea that a lot of our badges I'm not going to say everyone, but a lot of our badges should be account badges, because if you've made a new character and you've got 3 others who have gone to max level and you've done everything, you want your potential teammates, you want the people you see to be able to tell that, you know, you're not a brand new player. And if you are a brand new player, then we plan to have incentives so that people welcome you, so that there are things to do. That should be part of the community and part of the culture here. One of the things I like in an MMO is if a regular player can come in by themselves, join the game, and be welcomed. I think we've all had the experience that when that happens, that game just feels wonderful. And the reverse experience does not.
I think community is just so vital to an MMO.
Yes.
We have a couple questions about decals to put on base costume.
Sure.
Will that be available for players?
We like the decal idea. We're not going to say absolutely for launch, because we were actually working some stuff out. Matt's in the middle of running a team effort to rebuild the character creator with features that features we were asked for in our alpha. So we want to make a coherent set of improvements, expansions to the character creator, and decals have not been absolutely agreed to yet.
Gotcha.
But I'll just say in passing, both Matt and I really like the idea of decals.
They do help a lot with customization, setting your character apart.
You know, I think the first month that Matt and I were working together, he said, I want to show you something, and he took me to another MMO, and he said, look at this, look at these decals. So it's not that we're not talking about it, it's just I never like to promise something unless I'm pretty darn sure we've either got it or will have it shortly. How many players have been disappointed by their devs who promised X and then didn't even get close?
I always assume, would I be happy with 25% of the features the devs are telling me will be present in the game? That to me seems a solid number.
Yeah, that's not my number. My number's a lot higher than that. I think.
Can we?
Go ahead.
No, continue. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think our community gets the sense that we don't want to overpromise and appreciates it. And if we miss a feature and we're open and honest and say, you know what, we missed that, I think our community will say, my gosh, you got so many more. We're not really that agitated about it. But we don't want to miss any features, and we certainly don't want to be promising more than we're sure we can do.
Now, we have a couple of questions about the flight here. Can the pose in flight be customizable, and why does this look a lot smoother than Ambassador's flying? Okay,
so there are several things going on there. Will we have multiple flight poses? Eventually, yes. At start right now, we have one. Also, it may not have occurred to the audience, but each character model, that is the male, the female, and the big guy, have those animations applied to them, right? So they are slightly different. If you looked at some of the earlier videos, you would have noticed that in flight, our females had their feet sort of softly moving back and forth, and the males did not. And that is because we designed our own flight animation set, and then we redesigned it, and then we've had it touched up several times, and we're not entirely 100% on it yet. So at different points we've shown different versions of it. I think I answered the question, but eventually we will have multiple poses while flying, and the reason they look a little different is probably because they're a little different. Also, right now we just finished a whole set of optimizations in this map, which make everything, flight, combat, everything else, a little smoother and a little faster, and that could be affecting what you see on the screen. Matt,
so if you had
Ambassador out right now, he might be smoother than before?
Correct.
Yeah, possibly. This is we've gone through a whole scale of optimizations inside of the map, so even just the overall performance of the game right now is just way better. It's like you can see it in video or even just in standard play. Like right now, just controlling the character, it just feels so much more smooth, and that's awesome. That's a really great thing because we're in this gigantic city map, and I'm sure I'm probably cranking about 120 frames per second, you know, and that's insane. That's really good.
Now, is that just on a super high-tech dev computer? How does that
Oh no, I
compute across?
got a GTX 980. I'm probably on about a mid-level computer right now. No. I gotta upgrade my computer. I'm a little outdated here. This computer, I probably built it about 3 years ago, so it was top notch then. I don't think it is now though.
Oh, mine was top-notch 6 years ago. So I'm outdated as well, yeah.
Whenever we run our stress testing and we're aiming for like a target system, we're actually using our lowest targeting system is a what I like to call a really crappy laptop, and then Casey gets offended. Because in my opinion, I hate that laptop because we have to optimize for it, and I hate that laptop. Did I say I hate that laptop? I don't think I said that.
You might have mentioned it to me a time.
Oh, okay. All right.
You didn't even do the test with Chris's laptop, which is a generation behind mine. Although it actually performed pretty similarly.
I'm sure that I hate his laptop too.
But, you know, we have to plan for people having different kinds of computers, right? So, we are doing that. We put a lot of effort into optimization. I'm just thinking it's January, and we had a huge optimization program last July that has never really ended, because an MMO is a complicated beast. You can't just buy assets in the marketplace, toss them in, and say, here we go. Really, there's an enormous amount of effort has to go into optimization.
We also had questions, and I'm sure this is not going to be a surprise, if there's any information on an updated alpha test schedule.
Well, you know, I'll just say I'm pretty sure we're going to be doing it in February. A couple times recently, we thought we had licked the problem we had, and in fact we had, and a new one surfaced. So we do want to make sure that our alpha testers get a good experience. And February is our date. We're going to be doing a combat alpha in February.
Yeah, we also increased the scope of our alpha tests, so we added additional things that are gonna be features we weren't originally going to add to the alpha test. So we're even adding more on top of it. So we want a better overall experience, and also we want to collect more information from additional systems whenever we actually run it. So just a little pushback on it, so that way we could get the most out of it.
I will say I love the fact that you can run on the legends.
Yeah, that's
so
one
is
thing.
there anything else? I guess I should ask, maybe the audience will answer. Did we hit the mark here? Was this interesting to hear about the enemies and, see the progress? And we're going to find out if anyone's still watching.
Well, while they're typing, they're typing, so they're still here. While they're typing their response to your question, come on, tell us how you really feel, guys. Let it go. I think this looks fabulous. I'm blown away by how much better this looks from the last tour that I had. And I mentioned this before, the enemies. It's really nice to me to hear the interpoliticking. So for me, at least, speaking just from my own personal perspective, I think this has been fabulous.
Thank you very much. If there are more questions, we can answer them, and if not, I'm going to say thank you to you, Neith, and to your audience. But I do want to mention one thing, and for those who don't know, Neith has a Patreon page, and Neith, you should send that out so people can see it. I know I subscribe to it. She wrote an article recently explaining why, in her view, really tab targeting is superior to active combat for MMOs. And when I read it, I thought, yes, that's exactly what I've been trying to explain to people. You said it very, very well. I agree with that.
Hey, I'm gonna on the note of the combat thing, I'm gonna take a moment, stop sharing, and then reshare my screen with something really interesting.
Oh, go ahead, Matt. That's a good idea.
Cool.
Okay.
So yeah, Well, hang for a little bit. Matt's got something else cool to show.
Well, since you were very kind and plugged for me, I will. Oh wait, I think I.
Have you got a way to show your Patreon?
I am so new to Twitch. I know that there's a way I should be able to do that, but I'm gonna have to type it into the chat.
Type it into the chat. People should go visit it. That article was great, and I know you just established it, so hoping you'll get more followers on Twitch and maybe some supporters on your Patreon.
Well, that's very kind of you to. I'd completely. I know you mentioned before I should mention it while we're talking, but I completely forgot to mention it. So I think that is it.
One of the key points of the article is, of course, action combat's really popular. People love it. But if you're on a team with a healer or a buffer or debuffer, oh, here we go. Good work, Matt. So I know what this is. Matt and I were actually talking to one of our coders about the alpha test. And we're saying, well, you know, we've licked these problems. Are we ready to go? And suddenly, just casually, the guy just flies us up here. And I said, what is this? He says, oh, you know, this is, I'm testing some stuff having to do with how the FX work and what's going on. And I just thought, well, it's completely irrational because that one poor Nagdelian would have been toast long before this. But it's also sort of funny to see. You could see the same thing going on the top of the next building as well.
Oh, those special effects look
Correct.
awesome. The darkness powers, I can't decide whether I like the darkness or the lightning powers better. Hey, is that me?
That is the character you designed.
Awesome, she's even got dark.
She's got darkness, that's right. Let's just hope we don't meet any Nagdelians who can take this kind of damage. This guy's been standing there for 4 days, as far as I know. Fortunately, he hasn't shot back yet, which is very nice of him, really. But
He's on a retreat to learn about humans. He's
yes.
going to take this combat knowledge back to his people, and they'll be able to utilize defensive techniques.
So one of the things we think about, I know it's off the topic for this talk, but you know, if you had a team with the FX, how do they look when they overlap? It's you know, something we have to consider. You also don't want to have the screen burning people's eyes out, but you want it to look cool. So
yeah, I know. Often in fights, it's impossible to figure out what's going on because the FX are just, that's all you see.
I don't think we've ever shown this before, you know, the multiple power sets on the same target. But we are thinking about it anyway, even if it's not perfectly optimized at this point. We are thinking about it.
Lots of praise in the chat. So everyone's is quite impressed.
Excellent.
What is that crystallization that's happening? What power is that?
It's a freeze shot. That's freezing shot. Yeah.
And that is,
So
that's Ambassador's power set, isn't it, man?
Yeah, it's from the Street Sweeper power set. Yeah.
Very nice.
It is funny when you're developing a game. I had no idea that Casey had set this up, but it just looks really cool, actually.
All right. Well, while we watch the Pretty Shinies for a bit, I've actually been asked to talk about myself. I know that I'm not very good at self-promotion, so thank you very much for asking. I have been writing about MMOs across various sites for a little over a decade now. I think 2004 on 10 Ton Hammer is where I started. So for any long-term MMO fans who've read any sort of writings across multiple sites, it's possible you've read my work before. And basically, the site I was writing at before, 2P, there was a little bit of weirdness going on there, and I ended up They told me they were shutting down. I don't actually know what happened. It's a question mark to me. So I'm just going to accept that they were shutting down and didn't want any more writers there. And I was struggling with, do I want to find another site to work for? Do I want to go through all that effort? And a couple of my long-term fans said, write on Patreon. Write for us. Let us support you directly. And thinking about it, that to me was kind of the best solution, because writing for big sites like 2P, they really push you to do clickbait type stuff. Get the eyeballs on the page. I was paid by how many people would view my writing, so it was less about informative quality work and more about, you know, sensationalism, I guess is the best way to put it. So when I put up my Patreon, my thought was, now I can focus on what I actually want to do, you know? I can take the time I need to write a review or to write an article and not worry about getting it out right now so it's the first thing out there. I want to provide quality to the readers. So does that answer your question, you guys? Who am I and what am I doing? Hopefully this is the first stream with devs of many coming up in the future. I know that Casey has said that he can meet with me to do this again, and I'm also in the middle of talking with a few other games as well. So hopefully there's some good stuff, not just me producing content on my own. Pause here for a minute because we're really mostly about Ship of Heroes.
No, that's fine. I'd like to see your venture succeed.
Well, thank you. I would too. It's very nerve-wracking because, like I said, I'm not very good at self-promotion at all. But SOH Golden Ace would like to zoom in on one of the females with long hair to see how it is moving during the action.
Oh.
I'm covered in darkness. Now, I can tell you, since this is the character that I made in the Character Creator Alpha, as I was moving her around and molding her face and building her, the hair actually did move with the movement in the creator. So it gave a really good impression of kind of how it's going to flow and look in game. So you're not going to be surprised by the hair, at least in my experience.
One of the things that's interesting, it's happening at Epic right now, is I'm pretty sure this has been done with Apex physics, wasn't it, Matt?
Yes, this particular hair is Apex. Yeah.
And NVIDIA is going away from Apex. I'm sorry, Epic is going away from Apex and going toward NVIDIA's tool set. So we're evaluating that as well for future use. And it may have some advantages to us. But we do want the hair to move. I mean, it's got to be realistic to that level.
And thank you guys for the compliments sent in my direction.
No problem. You deserve it. Actually, this is kind of interesting, Matt, to be behind them and see if you were playing the character, you could be looking over the shoulder like this.
Can we get behind the Nagdalian to see what the power shooting at you would look like?
Sure.
Fireworks.
And that is one of the things, you know, you really don't want to blind the players if their teammates are getting hit hard, right?
Yeah.
So we've got to work this out. It's a balancing issue in terms of the FX.
Now, there are games with settings that allow you to turn off other players' effects.
Yeah, we like that idea, by the way. Just see your own and the enemies. It not only makes the game faster, but it also does, you know, potentially deal with the issue we're having right there. Of course, it also robs you a little bit of some of the excitement of the game, so that would have to be an individual choice.
Right.
I get a kick out of just watching this, though. It's so neat.
It is cool. It reminds me of those balls. You know, you touch it and the electricity inside kind of goes to your hand.
Yes.
They often show it with your hair kind of standing on end. many more compliments. So thank you, Matt, for showing us this unexpected bit of special effects. Now, I know you had talked about wanting to keep this to about an hour, so are we ready to close down here? Do we have any is the nag looking at us with disgust? I'm not quite sure what you mean there, Yulb.
The Nagdelian, I think he's referring to.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
is that one of the models you've discussed?
That poor guy can't fight back.
Well, okay. I'm going to say thank you very much for having us today, and thank you to the audience. I appreciate you guys listening to us, supporting us, being on the forums. One thing Matt and I know is we have the best community out there. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you both.
On that note, I think I'll say have a good weekend, everybody.
Yeah, everyone have a great weekend. Thanks for showing up and watching. And, of course, thanks to you, Casey and Matt, for showing up and giving us all this wonderful eye candy to look at. I can't wait for this game to come out, and I'm pretty sure everyone here feels the same way.
Thank you. And remember, everybody, sign up for her Patreon. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yep, you too.
Bye-bye.
All right. See you later, everyone. Thanks for showing up.
Bye, everybody.